Hope you can hear me. Oh, just wait for that to do its thing. All right. So tonight we are going to be talking about how to tackle fruit fly and citrus gall wasp. And I'm going to stop halfway and take any questions as well, so we can all sort of remember what's being said. So my name is Kay Roberts Palmer. I am a garden designer, consultant. I do a lot of education around Melbourne. I'm really passionate about backyard gardeners and backyards and supporting gardens. I named my business Blue Bee Garden Design because of the blue banded bee. Hopefully some of you have seen a blue banded bee. They're a native bee in Melbourne. They're a solitary bee, and what they do is they crawl into little bits of mud and mortar, and they lay only 1 or 2 young per season. But if you love your tomatoes, your eggplant, that sort of thing, they go up to the flowers and they headbang the flowers really quickly, and it produces more pollen and you get more fruit and veg, and they're absolutely gorgeous. They've got little blue stripes on them. So if you haven't seen one before, just go look it up, but hopefully get them in your garden. And if you plant things like salvias or flax lily, dianellas, you can get blue banded bees coming in your garden. I also run the Save Our Citrus campaign, obviously while I'm talking about citrus gall wasp tonight. So yeah, I'm really passionate about protecting citrus trees. Melbourne has a long history and a beautiful history with our citrus trees, but we need to know how to maintain them, look after them. Okay, that's really important, and particularly with the gall wasp. So tonight we're going to talk about what is the citrus gall wasp, the life cycle, and your tree response, because it is quite interesting, management in the garden. And then I'll take questions on the citrus gall wasp. Okay. So what is the citrus gall wasp? Unfortunately, it is a native. Dun, dun. It's not one of these pests that have come from overseas. It is a native. It actually came from Queensland, far New South Wales, and it basically made its way down to Melbourne through the transport routes in the 1990s. That's when they think it first hit Melbourne. And of course, down here, there's no natural predators in Melbourne. And because we've got smaller backyards and we love our lemon trees, it just flew from tree to tree to tree. And suddenly people were like, you know, what's going on? What's this? Are these galls, these swellings that we're seeing on our trees? Now, it affects all citrus. You may see, you may have like a lime and you see a lot of the swellings on the branches, and you think, oh, well, it's just affecting my lime. I don't need to look at the other ones. No, it will go for all citrus. You do sometimes see that there's like a sacrificial type tree, like a lime tree. It was really partial to grapefruit as well, but I highly recommend to everybody, check all your citrus, because it's quite sneaky and you'll see lumps at the bottom and the top of your trees, and you really need to get in there and have a look at your tree. Now, the good news for us as gardeners is it has an annual life cycle, which is really good, because it means we can go out and target the tree and get those galls out and, you know, control it, rather than it sort of reproducing very quickly. That would be hard for us. Its original fruit, I should mention, are finger limes. They're amazing little fruits, finger limes. They produce these little like juicy capsules, and you can get them in different sort of slightly different flavors and colors, and they're just amazing looking fruits. In fact, the citrus tree, the original citrus tree was called Citrus glauca, and it came from sort of when there was Gondwana land, when all the continents were joined together, and it was a bushy type shrub. And that's what all citrus trees come from. So you find, like with the finger lime, it's always got the sort of spikes on it. That's because of what it originated from. So very interesting stuff there. All right, so the life cycle of the citrus gall wasp. So in spring, so right now, the adults are out and they're tiny. they're smaller than a full stop. So you can't really see them, all right? They don't hurt you. They're not going to come near humans, but what they do is they fly around. And with this crazy windy weather we've been having, right, they're just being blown everywhere. And what they do is they land on the juicy stems of the citrus tree. So they're looking for the new shoots, the new growth, and they sting through the bark, the cambium layer, and they will be laying their eggs into the heartwood of your tree. So with your tree, you've got the external cambium layer, the bark, which is the alive bit. And if ever you want to tell if a tree has a part that's living, if you just scrape it slightly and see the green, that's where it's alive. It's always on the outside. So the citrus wasp goes through that and puts its eggs, okay, they burrow into the heartwood. So you don't know, and they're tiny, tiny eggs. You can't really see them. Then in autumn, what happens is they turn into larvae, turn into the grubs, and they start eating away at the stems inside, right? You may start to see a swelling, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but basically they're eating your tree from the inside. Then what will happen as it beginning of spring, as we get into it's around 15 degrees, roughly. Once the temperature starts heating up, the larvae will pupate, turn into the adults again. They emerge. So that's what they're doing right now. And then they will fly around and inject other branches. So one wasp has 100 eggs. So that's why it's such a problem across Melbourne. So you can imagine, right? Do the numbers. So what happens? So there's 5 stages of citrus gall wasp infection. Now, the good news is that at any point, you can break the life cycle, right? So really, as gardeners, we should be getting out and doing the work in our gardens. We should be maintaining our lemon trees anyway. So the first stages, stage 1 and stage 2, you'll have your lemons, you've got a good canopy, but what you'll start to see is these little bulges on the stems. Now, they might not be really big and noticeable, but if you run your thumb along the stem and you feel that kind of swelling, you'll start to see that in stage 1 and 2. If you leave it, as we start to get into stage 3 and 4, the galls will swell. They'll get bigger and they will surround the stem. They tend not to just be on one side. They will be right around. So you've got the thin stem, and then you've got the bit of the swelling. You'll see it all around the place. As we start to get into stage 4, suddenly your tree, you'll get lots of fruit, usually get lots of fruit. And you think, well, the tree's obviously coping with this gall wasp, with these galls on it. It seems to be doing okay. What's actually going on is your tree is at a tipping point. It's like if you go to hospital and you get a secondary infection. So the tree is trying to fight the galls. And the reason why it swells up, because it's trying to keep the water and the sugars, or the nutrients, running up and down the stems, because the stems are highways for them, and they have to bypass the gall that's inside the larvae. So that's why it swells up. That's what it's trying to do. And what you find is you get all this fruit, and the reason why is because the tree is going, well, I'm slowly dying. I need to reproduce myself. So fruit is seeds, which is the next generation. So suddenly you'll got a lot of fruit, but you also notice that the canopy is not that great either. Roughly, you need about 30 leaves for every piece of fruit on your tree, roughly. And you might notice the canopy is starting to really die off. Now, stage 4.5, you've got quite noticeable galls, big galls along all the branches. You'll have no fruit. The canopy is non-existent, and stage 5 is death. And I've got a photo in my slide of, unfortunately, a lemon tree that I had to go and see. And as you can see, it died from it, because the problem is with citrus gall wasp, unlike other pests like leaf miner, it burrows into the stems and it causes structural damage, right? So it's really killing the tree from the inside. Now, the fruit is still okay. You can still eat the fruit. That's all right. But what I like to say to people is that, you need to protect your tree, because if you lose your tree, there's no more fruit. Some people go, oh, well, I'll leave a few galls on or blah, blah, blah. But what happens is you're leaving your tree unhealthy, and potentially the wasp would come out and spread more. So it's better to have a healthier tree and a pruned tree, which has the potential for fruit, and you look after your tree, and then you have the fruit. And unfortunately, citrus gall wasp has become endemic across Melbourne. So this now needs to be part of our maintenance routine in the winter months, right? That we take out those galls. We have to do it. If we want to love our trees and we still want to have our lemon trees in Melbourne, this is something we need to do to protect our trees. And with lemon trees, any citrus tree, it is a fruit tree, right? So it has a different pruning regime from, say, a plum or an apple or that sort of thing, which you do at a particular time. You can prune your citrus trees most of the year, except when it's really hot and really wet, but you should keep them to a good height. I have seen some crazy big trees out there, and it can get dangerous if you've got the fruit too high. So keep your tree to a reasonable height that you can reach the fruit and you can see what's going on. You can see if there's any galls in your tree, and it's not too much hard work for you, right? You want to keep it easy. We want to make gardening fun and not too onerous for all of us. So yes, the good news is you can break that life cycle, and hopefully I don't have to go out and see any more dead trees like I had to see then. Okay. So for those of you that maybe have seen a couple of galls but aren't sure, the first picture is an old gall. So this is where the adult wasp has munched its way out, and you'll see there's some tiny holes on the gall. It tends to be a bit of a darker color. Unfortunately, that cambium layer is damaged, right? It's not going to recover. The tree can't fix that, and it's weak. Now, there won't be any wasps in there left because they've all come out, but the problem is that if you want to grow fruit, that branch is not going to be any good for you, right? It's going to just break over time. So that's the old gall. Then if you're looking at the fresh growth, what you need to look for is these stripes, striations. They're very distinct, like stretch marks on the sides of the stem. So the stem normally on a fresh stem, it will be uniform green. It will all look the same. And then you might notice it slightly swells and you have these stripes. If you're not sure, you can always rub your thumb along, and if it feels a bit bulgy, that's potentially a gall. Now you can open it, you can scrape the cambium layer off a bit and just have a look. And if you see any dots in that gall, then that's the wasps. They don't really move or anything, but you can actually see them, right? So usually the stripes like that are a dead giveaway. Now, a little bit of complication there is that if it's a mature stem, you will have stripes on a mature stem, but they're not like really thick and obvious. They'll be part of other sort of stripes on the mature wood, but the dead set way to tell is you run your finger up, and if it feels like it's a bulge, then that's going to be a gall on those branches. The other thing, the weird thing you might notice is you get these angled branches, because what happens over time is the galls start to fuse together. You might have one, like two on the same branch, and as they get bigger and bigger, they fuse. We call them sausage galls. And I saw a tree once that all 5 branches were sausage galls, and I called it the hand of doom because it was really scary, and all the branches were like tumors, right? So you can imagine there'd be hundreds of larvae in there. It was pretty bad. So anything that looks weird, like a 90-degree angle, you need to take that out. And in fact, if you are pruning and you see a weird angled branch, you should be taking that out anyway. It's not a good cropping branch. It can't hold the weight of the fruit. It's hard for your tree to keep that branch alive, right? So just something to consider. So you should really know your tree, and so keep it to a good height. All right. So there are actions that we can do to minimize the gall wasp damage. So from April to June, you want to cut out any of the galls you're seeing. You want to avoid pruning in September, so spring a really heavy prune, because what happens is you get a lot of growth. You get a lot of that juicy, fresh growth, which the citrus gall wasp is really attracted to. But we still need to take the galls out earlier in April to June, right? We need to, I even say like around Easter time, you could go out and start taking them out. Now, the other thing is that citrus trees are heavy feeders, and they do like feeding, fertilizing. You want to tend to do that more like at Easter time rather than in springtime, so we don't get that fresh growth, right? Now, if you have a gall that bulges on one side of the stem, you can peel off the cambium bark and expose the eggs. When you see the dots, that will expose them. Oxygen will kill them. All right, so that's enough. Now you've got to be careful, because if it's starting to go all the way around and you're getting quite enthusiastic and you start pruning off more of the bark, if you take the bark too far, you're going to ring bark that stem. So you might as well cut that stem off and give the tree a chance to grow another stem. Citrus are evergreen. They are continually growing. They don't go into a dormancy period. So they will grow from the other nodes that they've got their lateral branches, all right? So don't be afraid to take it out rather than leave it on. But be careful, because I've seen people only leave a tiny bit of cambium layer left, and then I think, well, you might as well take it off, all right? You need to monitor your tree. Make sure, as I said, it's to a manageable height and width. I tend to do what I like to refer to as a bit of donut pruning. So I keep it really open in the center. So like almost like a vase shape. So in the middle, the oxygen can get in, the sunlight can get in. You're not getting as many mosquitoes. I've seen people with birds in their citrus trees. There shouldn't be birds in your citrus trees. They're going to spread mites and other things. And it's why is because the birds love that density in trees for their nests. But we're growing fruit trees here, so we want it wide, we want it open, so there's a lot of light going around, all right? So just keep that in mind with your pruning. Now, the other thing you can use is a product called kaolin clay. It's a powder from clay and lime. Now, what you do with it is you spray it onto the stems and leaves in late August, and the coating, the wasp isn't so attracted to it. Now, this is not a fail-safe, all right? This won't 100% eliminate it, and not a good idea to spray it on the blossoms or on the fruit. Blossoms, because you're not going to get your pollinators. They won't like that coating of kaolin clay. But for the wasp, if they see it on the stems and the leaves, they'll go, oh no, I'm not so attracted to that. But the other issue is that if it rains, it's going to come off. And also from a photosynthesizing point of view, you're covering your leaves in a bit of a film there, which isn't so great, but it doesn't last very long. The clay, coating doesn't last very long. So really, it's okay to do it in late August, but just keep that in mind, that you probably need to follow the instructions and use it only for a certain period of time. That's all good. Now, you might have seen the sticky yellow traps that are out there being sold. I really don't like these sticky traps. They capture everything. I've heard from people that they've captured fairy wrens, they've captured bees, they've captured hoverflies and your lacewings and all your really good insects that you want in your garden. They just get stuck to these things. Plus it's plastic, and that's more plastic in the environment. So the sticky traps aren't that great. You want to avoid them. However, there is one good use I found for the sticky traps, which is if you have indoor plants and you get the little midges from your potting mix, because you overwater your potting mix, that's where they come from. You can use the sticky traps for your indoor plants, but please don't use them outside. They're just a bit of a nightmare outside, unfortunately. Okay, so what do you do? What do you do? Cut these galls out. You've done your job. don't put them straight into the compost bin or your green bin, right? The larvae in there is still alive. It's protected. That's one of the problems we've got, is it's protected in the gall. Instead, put it in a bucket of water, or depending on how much you have, it might be bigger than that, just for a couple of days. And what happens is the water, you don't need to add anything to the water. It gets in there and it drowns them. It drowns the larvae and completely destroys them. We want to absolutely have none left, none alive. All right. And then you can put it in your green bin, but you need to wait until it's a bit rotten. All right. I had one guy, he left it in his bins for like 3 weeks and then it was pretty stinky. So you don't need to go to that extreme. Just really, 3 or 4 days until it's looking a bit rotten. That will be enough, and that's fine. Now, the other thing is, I don't know how many of you are going out there and using your kitchen peeler to peel open these galls. On Gardening Australia a few years ago, Jane Edmondson, we all love Jane, but she did a piece on using kitchen peelers. What are kitchen peelers for? Potatoes or carrots or that sort of thing. They're for kitchen stuff, right? They're not gardening tools. If you're going to go out in the garden, you need a really strong tool like a secateurs to open up those galls. And you should make sure with your secateurs that you're brushing them with like methylated spirits or something like that to keep them nice and clean and sharp. And you open the galls or you cut the galls off. Please don't use a kitchen peeler. They rust and they bend and they're not great. All right. So just avoid those. And also talk to your neighbours. The amount of times I've gone to someone's garden and I look over the fence and there's their lemon tree or the orange tree, and I'm like, have you spoken to your neighbour? Oh, no. Well, we all live on the one planet. We all live in Melbourne. Our fences don't matter to the citrus gall wasps. So it's good to just have a chat, and maybe if you could help them out, or you can have a bit of a group pruning day and get the galls out, that would be fantastic. Something like that would be awesome. So think about that. And also, as I mentioned, don't fertilize in spring. Wait until autumn. I actually say autumn is the new spring, because it's got that lovely rainfall. It's a bit cooler. It's a bit nicer. All right. So just avoid that. So there's a lot of information out there for gardeners to find out more about how to manage it, because for the agricultural industry, this is also a massive problem for them. And when I was talking to Citrus Australia, they were like, well, we need the gardeners to do the right thing because we're trying to do it too. And it's a joint problem. It's a group challenge that we all have, that we all need to take on, because it's at a point now where, do we want our lemon trees or do we want this wasp to take over everything, right? So if you're going to be a gardener, that means getting out and doing the work and enjoying the work and looking after your trees, all right? So there's some information. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a fact sheet and I'll put some information through that you can find out more, all right, more about this. Okay, so I'm going to just pause there and take any questions before we get on to our next fun pest for tonight. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, yep, just unmute yourself. You can ask a question.
Well, my name is Doug, and
hi,
I'm
Doug.
just making a comment.
Yes.
It's not just lemon trees that are a problem. I mean, it's Rutaceae family, which are Australian natives.
Yep.
So Coria, and those things can also hoard gall wasp.
Yeah.
And if you've got a native plant garden or your neighbour has, that can be an area which causes you to get infection from in your lemon tree from plants that are not obviously citrus plants.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for that. That's great.
I'm interested in how much you can prune your lemon tree back before you kill it yourself.
Yeah, good question. So I've taken citrus trees in the ground and I've taken them to about 5 stems. So you've got your main trunk and then a couple of stems right back. It is quite extreme to do that. but it has to be in the ground tree. And then what happens is you will get a flush of new growth, and then you need to shape prune it so it's back into that nice vase type shape. But they're pretty tough trees, and I've found that they can cope with that. The only issue is that you put on a lot of fresh, juicy growth. So you need to make sure you're doing it in the cooler months if you're going to do it. In a pot, it's a little bit more difficult. If you've got, your citrus in a terracotta pot, they tend not to do so well if you prune them that hard. So yeah, in a pot, it's a bit harder, but certainly for anything in the ground, I've taken it right down to a few lateral branches, and they do come back. They're pretty hardy. All right. They're pretty hardy trees.
We've got a situation where we've got gall wasp, but we've also got possums who have kind of just totally devoured probably the top 50% of foliage as well.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the possum issue. I hear about possums quite a bit. You can use wildlife netting to sort of keep it under control, but I think maybe focus on getting the galls out first, then having a look at what's left on your tree, like the shape of your tree, and bringing that down a bit. But I have to say, if it's a mature tree, it's kind of, you're going to have to work with the shape that it is. But it is tricky with possums because, as you probably know yourself, they like to strip the outside, the zest, and leave the lemon. And there are a few deterrents for possums, because you can't, hurt or kill possums. They are native animals. I'm sure people tonight have other ideas of deterrents, but you can use things like Tabasco sauce in stockings. They don't like that. They don't like dog hair, because remember, they're hunting by sight and smell, so that's what they're looking for. And lapsang Shulong tea, they don't like the strong smelling tea. They don't like anything shiny hanging from trees either. They're not sure what that is. But if you have a hungry possum, there's not much you can do. And I got that from DECA. I looked up the Department of Environment, and they basically officially said, if you've got a hungry possum, unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it. Okay, so I'm sorry.
At least we can get rid of the galls.
Yeah, get rid of the galls. Angelique, you've got your hand up.
So, Kay, I used to listen to a gentleman, John Lamb, ABC Gardening, Adelaide, and citric gall wasp was one of his pet issues.
Yeah.
And he would on an annual basis, and he retired maybe about 12 months ago, but he would say that, and I don't recall the source of his information, but he would have a specific date where it was the optimum, emergence of the gall wasp.
Yeah.
Do we have anything similar in Victoria?
Unfortunately, because of the weather changes we have here, weather patterns, we have kind of a bit of extreme weather here. It's not so, you can't really pinpoint it as much. But if we have a week of like 15 degrees a week, successive days of that, that's a good sign that they're going to start coming out. And I have pruned some galls around, early September. And as I prune them, I've seen the adult wasps coming out, but it kind of changes. And with climate change, it's really hard to pinpoint it. But if you go for like a couple of days of 15 degrees, I think that's a really good sign they're starting to come out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Any other questions before we move on to fruit fly?
There's a few questions in the chat.
Yep.
So there's one about fruit fly, but we'll leave that to the end.
Yep.
Fine. There's one from Deborah. Is it too late to be pruning citrus for gall wasp now?
No, it's not too late. The weather has been quite changeable, as we all know. It's kind of the temperatures fluctuating. No, I would get out and prune it. Yeah, I'd get it out now. I think it's a good time. We're still not into that really hotter period yet, so it's a good time. Yeah.
Great. And from Winifred, what if the gall is on the main bark?
Okay, if it's on the main bark again, scrape it open. Scrape it open, but just be aware if you scrape off all the way around your branch, you're going to ring bark your tree. All right. Now, when you've scraped it open, you don't need to put anything on that wound. It will air dry, it will seal. And the amazing thing about trees is that what they do over time is the cambium layer will sort of cover that wound till eventually all you'll see is a little bit of a bump on the tree. So yes, get them out now. That would be great.
Thank you. And what is the best thing to do now if you haven't removed the galls?
If you haven't removed the galls,
Yeah.
remove the galls.
Okay.
That's the answer to that one. Get them out. I mean, I had a little lemon tree in a pot, and I always go and have a look and be really forensic about it. You know, check the branches, have a look, because the other thing about if you've got citrus gall wasp or those gall swellings, it's weakening a tree. So you're going to end up getting other pests attacking your tree, like citrus leaf miner and other nasties. They just know when the tree's weak. So the best thing is to get that out, and then your tree can start to recover and regrow. They are constantly growing, all right? So don't be too worried about that. Just get the galls out.
Great, thank you. Next one. I'm growing a standard lemon tree as it is in front of a water service. If I get a gall on the trunk, which is still quite young, does this mean I need to prune back to below the gall and start again?
If it's on the trunk, I would just nick that open. Just be a bit more careful and just open it up slightly, but you don't have to take off the entire thing in that case. Yeah, it's a bit trickier when they're, you know, a bit smaller, but as much as you can, if you open it up to oxygen, you're going to kill that larvae. Yeah.
Is it a good time to cut out galls now as wasps emerge and make galls in new growth and won't be in
get
growth?
them out now.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Do you have to cut out all galls?
Yes. You have to cut out all galls. You have to get them out and put them in the water. Take them and put them in the water. It will give your tree a chance to recover. It's like if you had a wound on your arm, you wouldn't just go, I'll just ignore that and keep going. You're going to do something about it. So we do need to try and look after our trees. Yeah.
Next one, we cut our tree right back in winter to remove the galls. We now have a lot of new growth. Should we prune it back?
Okay. So that's what I was talking about before. So you prune it back to take the galls out, and then suddenly you get like all these little branches coming up. Yes, you need to do shape pruning. So what we want to do when we talk about shape pruning is we want these stems to, like if you were looking at your tree from above, like spokes on a wheel, like a bicycle wheel, you want individual branches going outwards, nicely spaced from each other. So if you've got branches, new branches that are growing downwards, that are growing inwards, that are broken, that are crossing over, that are shadowing each other, you need to take those out and let the ones that are going outwards at a nice 45-degree angle, you need to keep those ones so they can grow nice and strong. But yes, you need to do a bit of shape pruning, which is a lot of fun. It's really good. And what you do when you do that is walk around your tree. Don't just stand in one spot and get really enthusiastic and prune until you've got a hole. You need to move around and look at the shape of your tree. Every tree is its own character. It's a lot of fun doing that sort of shape pruning and making a tree look beautiful. But yes, if you've got a lot of new growth, you need to do a bit of that. Yeah.
Next one, what can you do for citrus this time of year?
Okay, so this time of year, it's basically just cutting out any broken branches, any sort of dead branches, crossing over branches. You need to get those out. I wouldn't feed your citrus now. I would wait until November, December, and then you can give it a bit of, say, chicken manure or cow manure, and you put that around the drip line, but wait until we're a bit more into summer. Make sure you've got a regular watering regime with your lemons, because if you overwater, the fruit can split, and if you underwater, the leaves fall off. In fact, if you overwater or underwater, your leaves you might lose leaves. So it's really a matter of getting to know your lemon tree.
The next question is, what about the the electrical tape method, which I'm not sure what that's referring to.
I'm not sure about electrical tape method. Oh, is that maybe when if the gall walks on the tape? Yeah, it probably wouldn't work as well. They're very protected in those galls. Unfortunately, there's nothing that can really get at them. So we have to do the work. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a few helpful comments about possums, but I won't read those out.
Okay, so what we might do, because I'm just looking at the time, I might do
Okay.
the next part of the presentation, and then we can come back to those questions. If there's
Yeah,
any,
okay.
yeah,
We'll
cool.
go
All
back.
right.
There's a couple more about Gall Wasp, but yeah, we can do about the end.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so moving on to fruit fly, we're going to talk about the history of fruit fly, the life cycle, adult fruit fly, prevention, control, and control in the garden. So again, what is it with Queensland? I don't know, but this one comes from Queensland, from the rainforests. It causes damage by laying its eggs into the fruit. It's a massive problem. It's a massive problem across the world. It costs billions in damage to the agricultural industry. Unfortunately, it has gotten here. It has come down to Victoria. I think it was first found in Ballarat. And now I know we have it in Watsonia and Warrandyte and other places. Yeah, it's now here. So we need to be aware of it. What fruits are fruit fly hosts? So when we think about our fruits, you ready? Okay. Basically everything, people, everything is affected by fruit fly. All right, you don't have to read all of that, but just think everything we love, all our amazing fruit, the fruit fly loves too. All right, so what happens is if we start on the left-hand side, the adults emerge, they come up from the ground, from the soil. They're looking for proteins. That's what they want. In 10 days, they're mature enough, they start breeding. Then the female, she's going to put her eggs into underneath the skin of the fruit, and she can lay 800 new eggs in her lifetime of only 3 months. So that's a lot. Then what happens is the larvae take those days to mature. They go through a few stages, but what they do is they turn the inside of the fruit into that horrible rotting jelly type substance that they love. They suck that up, they grow, and then they munch their way out of the fruit. And then they go through another stage where they drop through to the ground again, and they harden up. They harden up into this pupae period where they're in this casing that's quite tough, and they can exist in the soil sometimes for a couple of years. They're quite tough in this phase, and then when conditions are right and the temperature's a bit warmer, they will come out from their case, turn into the fruit fly again, and the whole cycle starts again. But the interesting thing is they can be dormant in the soil for a long time in that hard case that they have. All right, so the main thing is sort of at the moment, again, when we're talking about 15 degrees or warmer, that's when they start breeding. And they're very much attracted to pheromones. So it's all about scent and pheromones. That's how they find each other. Again, they're really, really small. You can barely see them, but they have got this sort of brown body to them. So they have a bit of more of a distinctive look than the gall wasp, but it's very much about the pheromones and the scent at this point. So how do we manage them? So in September to November, that's when they're becoming really active and increasing in size. They're looking for that protein. They can go for even really small fruit. You know, like you did sometimes with your lemons and things, you get the tiny little fruits. They'll go for that. They'll put their eggs into the tiniest of fruit. At this point, you've got the males and females looking for each other. So what you want to do is you can put out protein bait sprays and traps. And a lot of nurseries sell these sorts of things, but the main thing is around timing, right? So now we're talking about these protein bait sprays and also the pheromone traps. That's what you need to be looking at this point. So it's a multi-pronged approach, and there's an artificial female scent called Kahlua. It's placed in a trap at several sites. It's got a particular agent in it it's like a sticky, sweet liquid, and it drowns them and they just fall down, and sort of that controls them. All right. You need to have a look at it on a weekly basis. You need to go out and check your trap and see how many are in there. And then you replace the liquid as well. So you keep replacing that for a while, and that will help get those populations down or even eradicate them from your garden. Okay. This is sort of what they look like. So if you're going to the nursery, they will look like this. You hang them from the tree. Sort of, I would hang them sort of a bit hidden in the canopy. So that's what they're looking for. So they can, and they'll be able to smell it and scent of it. They'll be looking for it. All right. And then you just top it up with the refill products, and that helps control them. There's also some fruit protection bags as well. Just to be aware with netting that we have to use wildlife netting. So if you have got some old netting in your shed or around your garden, you've had it for many years, it might not be legal now. So it's actually illegal to have that kind of, you know, the netting that has the big holes. If you could put your fingers through it, you now can't use that netting. You have to dispose of that netting and use the wildlife netting. All right. So just be aware of that. I think we're going to talk a bit more about that. Or do you want to talk about that now? No? Yep.
Oh yeah, I'll just say quickly, there is a net swap program that's happening at 5 local councils. So it's Brimbank, Merribeck, Yarra, Burundara, and I can't remember the last one, sorry, but I'll put a link in the chat. And basically, if you have an old net that you can stick your finger through, then if you're a resident of any of those councils, then you can swap that old net for a wildlife safe one. Thank you.
That's a great incentive. So
Yeah.
there you go. That's fantastic. So pleased. All right. So from December to February, that's when they're really going to be crawling all over your fruit and causing you a lot of issues. And look, if you've found it in one fruit, it's probably guaranteed that it's going to be in your other types of fruit too, right? So they're spreading through your garden. And if they've completed their life cycle, like they've mated and then they put their eggs in, you kind of missed your chance. So it's really now is the time to get those traps up and really get it under control, right? And again, the same control measures as for late spring, using your bait sprays and your traps, reapplying and refreshing the liquid in your trap. See a lot of is people leaving the fruit on the ground, the rotting fruit. That is so attractive to the fruit fly, all right? And you're going to have problems. So you might be doing all the right things in your tree with your traps, but if you're leaving the rotting fruit, it's going to cause you problems. Now, I put there that you can put it in a plastic bag and solarize it for a few days. Some people take it and freeze it overnight. That will kill the fruit fly. One woman told me she microwaved it, which I thought was a bit extreme. Just use your freezer or put it in a plastic bag and just kill those off. They're pretty easy to kill once you've got them. But don't leave that fruit around. Just check underneath your trees. And that's the other thing about, you know, managing some of these things, particularly in your fruit trees. You want to make sure that under your trees is nice and clear. So you're going to have your mulch under your trees, but don't have like pot plants or grasses or other things. I've been to people's houses and they're just really crowded underneath the tree, and then you can't get in there and check your traps and do the work that you need to do. You want to keep it nice and clean under there with your mulch. And it's also a good idea to do it because there's other pests like codling moth and things that love that really messy undergrowth if you've got logs and bricks, and they will just come back and reinfect your trees. So I like to, every couple of years, replace my mulch or refresh it so I'm not having so many problems with pests. So there is a bit of a hygiene thing with your gardens, so just be aware of that. Okay, so from March to May, so this is when it's starting to get cooler, right? So they're not so active, they're not flying around, they've kind of done the damage. But they are kind of starting to look for somewhere where they can settle potentially under eaves and that sort of thing. So you may want to consider, have a look at your own garden. There may be, you want to put up a few traps around the place, not just on the tree. So you're capturing as many as possible. You'll notice that even the ones that haven't been attacked, they are still going to be susceptible to attack because they're going to start having that beautiful ripening scent that the fruit fly is really attracted to. Any fruit that's already damaged, take it off your tree. Just be really conscious of what's happening on your trees and look after your fruit, and you can look at using your fruit bags. I had one lady that bagged all her fruit. She had her apples, or you can get the big netting. Now, if you are using the netting, make sure it's tight around your tree. So it's covering the top and then it's pegged properly in the ground. It's not loose and flapping around. And it's not touching the fruit as well, because the fruit fly is tiny and it can get through, it can, even get through a tiny hole potentially. So you just want to make sure, don't let it touch your fruit. It's also not good if it rains a lot and you've got the leaves touching the netting, which can create fungal infections. It's like having a wet bandage on your arm, right? It's not really such a good look. It can cause issues. So just really set your netting up. And again, that's coming back to having a good height on your fruit trees so you don't have to deal with it too much. And if you've got, say, your veggie patches, and you've got anything growing in there, again, netting is a really good thing to have, all right? And make sure you're cleaning up any fallen fruit. So June to August, so this is where they're becoming inactive. The adult flies, they're starting to die off, and they will be looking for sheltered locations, probably around like a garden shed or anywhere near fences, that sort of thing. So just have a look around then. It could be good to, give it if it's not comfortable for them. The pupae may have fallen into the soil. So unfortunately, there's not a huge amount you can do about that. Another thing you could look at doing around your fruit trees, if you've had a problem one year and then your next year you're really trying to get in there and help solve the problem, you could put a bit of like tarps or something at the bottom, tarpaulin at the bottom of your tree, just for a couple of weeks, in the really hot period, or like spring to summer, just to see, what falls from the tree. And then you can just give that a shake and throw out anything that lands on the tarpaulin. You probably won't be able to see it very well, but that might be another way of just stopping it from entering the soil, because once it gets to the soil stage, there's not a lot you can do until you have to wait till the next season, right? Yeah, and continue to pick up your fruit as well, as I keep saying. All right, so don't put the fruit, any damaged, infected fruit in your compost. It won't kill the fly eggs or the larvae, right? They're pretty protected in that fruit. Compost is for your veggie scraps. The way compost works is with microbes. So microbes are very tiny creatures, and they certainly can't attack the fruit fly. So the fruit fly is big enough that it will survive. And if it goes into the pupate stage where it's in the hard shell, they can't do anything. So there's no point in doing that. The other thing that sometimes you might find in older gardens is you have, say, for instance, a couple of apple trees and really only like one variety and you've still got the others, they can be hosts. So because they might be more neglected and not looked at properly, they can be a bit of a problem. So maybe just look at what are your favorite trees in the garden and remove the rest. So you're removing that issue, because sometimes people, put up with stuff, and it can be more about what's your favorite tree. Let's just keep those. All right. Having a look at fruiting buds on your trees. I know with, like, for instance, my lemon tree at the moment has a whole lot of fruiting buds coming up. I'm actually thinning it out. So what I'm doing is I'm taking off some of the little blossoms before they open. I'm only leaving a few of those on my lemon tree, and this lemon tree is in a pot, so that I can monitor those fruit. I'm not letting it go crazy and produce a whole lot of fruit, because the other thing is, right, you're not going to get the biggest and best fruit if you let every single fruit grow, because the tree usually can't cope with that anyway, and you're going to have fruit drop. So it's better to thin out those blossoms and just have those few fruiting buds, so you can watch those and look after those. I really like those dwarf size varieties of fruit trees as well in pots. You can really manage them. I've got a little pear in a pot, and I'm looking at it, and it got a caterpillar on it. And, I suddenly went out there and I went, oh, something's wrong. And I went out there and I squashed the caterpillar. Now, if it was a bigger tree, I would never have seen it. So that was a really nice thing. And a lot of us are time poor. We might not get out in the garden as much as we'd like. So smaller varieties can be a great thing too. Look at earlier fruiting varieties as well, so they don't sort of hang on till sort of later in the warmer season. So you can get your fruit and veg earlier as well. That's a really good thing to do. And I've spoken about the wildlife friendly netting before. That's something to consider. And also, I do practice a thing called companion planting with my vegetables. I don't tend to grow a whole lot of one thing, like a row of lettuce or a row of broad beans. I tend to mix it up, have some garlic in there, have some rosemary in there, sort of smellier type herbs and plants, and that can also confuse some of the pests. It won't eliminate the problem, but it's important to sort of mix things up, I think, in the garden, and also you can get some really interesting cropping out of that as well. So just be aware of that. Okay, so fruit fly being such a big problem across Australia, there is heaps of information out there that you can follow. But I think the main takeaways on the fruit fly is get your traps up, get your pheromone traps up now. Make sure that your tree is at a good height that you can really monitor it. Pick up any of your fallen fruit. Don't let it lie around, and don't put it in your compost bin. If you do have any damaged fruit, put it in the freezer just overnight, and that will kill them. Okay, so just be aware of the timing of this. That's really, really important. Okay, I might open it up to the questions, because there's probably a few questions about this one too.
Yeah, so Klein asked a question at the very start. How can you net tomatoes against fruit fly and still allow blue-banded bees to pollinate them, considering the tomatoes flower and fruit continually?
So, okay, so the pollinators are going to be going for the flowers. So if your fruit tree is in flowering stage, that's when the bees need to get to it. Okay, so the fruit fly is not going to be attracted to the flowers. So let your blue-banded bees and your bees go for the flowers, and then just net them when you start to get your fruit or veg. All right, so again, it's about timing with these things. And like I said, have some attractive flowers around, like your lavenders, your salvias, your dianellas, so that you get the bees in, they can do their work and go on, and then you can net your veggies or your fruit as they start to develop.
And if you want to unmute and ask a question, please just use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep reading the questions in the chat. It should look like a little face. But anyway, the next question is, can we talk about citrus miners? They are such a problem, perhaps in another session.
Yeah, they are a problem. I tend to, a really good sort of organic pesticide that you can use on a lot of pests, also like aphids and other things, is white oil. You can make that with, you get some organic detergent, some water, you put a bit of white vinegar in, this is in a small spray bottle, and you shake it up so it gets quite foamy, and then you spray it directly on the pests, and that suffocates them. And because it's an organic method, it will just break down in the environment. It won't leave anything nasty. Okay, so something like a white oil, eco oil, or you can make your own. There's lots of recipes online. Use an organic spray and then really target it. You can also do that with garlic sprays. You crush garlic and you put, again, a bit of detergent to sort of bind it all together with, fill your spray bottle up with water and shake it, and it stops them, it suffocates them. Yeah, so I suggest trying something like that would be a good thing to do.
Thank you. What about preventing the wasps attacking in the first place?
Yeah, this is why, if you can get the pheromone sent out, if because they're in the environment, right? We can't really stop where they're going, they're too small, but if they're attracted to the scent of something in the blossoms are happening, then they're more likely to go towards that, because there's not a lot of fruit out. So they're thinking, oh, you know, where is it? Where is the fruit? And if you've got something that smells like the fruit, they're more likely to go to that. But unfortunately, we can't stop them from being in the environment. We can just be aware of their behaviors and how we can get in there and disrupt their breeding cycle. That's basically the main thing we can do.
Thank you. Would netting the citrus tree prevent the galls?
So you can definitely try netting, but you'd need to do it probably July. And unfortunately, citrus are funny. They can be in blossom and producing fruit at the same time. So if you net it, then you're going to stop the bees from being able to pollinate while you've still got the fruit. But certainly if you don't have any, if you've done the blossoms and you think they're just starting to turn the fruit, you could certainly try the netting. I don't think there's a one fix for everything. I think you need to try different things. But certainly with the citrus gall wasp, you definitely need to target those galls, because there's hundreds of eggs in those. And you've just got to get them out. I don't know if anyone's ever taken a gall off and then peeled back the bark and just had a look. It's like Swiss cheese in there. It's really horrific. So unfortunately with the citrus gall wasp, we do need to just get those galls out. But yeah, sure, use the netting as well. Yeah.
Can you please expand on the use of kaolin clay? Best timing for use in pruning?
So best time of use in pruning?
Yeah.
For, what was that?
Is it kaolin clay or kaolin clay?
Oh, kaolin clay. Yeah. So you will have pruned your tree, say around Easter time, and then you want to use the kaolin clay in August, September, bit of October. So when and it's hard to pinpoint exactly, because we're watching the temperature. We're watching the temperature. So if suddenly they announce next week it's going to be 15 degrees all week, then you want to get out the weekend before. And with the kaolin clay, what you do is that you mix up the solution and put it in a spray bottle, and you want to really spray the branches if you can. It's a bit of a messy thing, and you will get leaves, but if you can just really target those stems, because that's what the wasp is going for, not the leaves. Unfortunately, it does get on the leaves, but it doesn't hurt it doesn't hurt your tree. It just creates a barrier. So around that time period is when you want to be doing it. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question. Do you know if, I think this is about fruit fly, are fruit fly in Hampton Bayside, Melbourne?
Sorry, fruit fly is in Hampton.
Yeah, is in Hampton Bayside, Melbourne. I think they're asking about a specific location. it's everywhere, right?
It's yeah, it's like it's a bit depressing, but I feel like it's kind of everywhere. You just need to do you can talk to your local council, you can talk to your biodiversity unit and find out if they've had a lot of people, you know, ringing in. But like this thing is in the environment now. Yeah, and we can't do a lot about it. So I would assume yes. Yeah.
2 years ago, I left the pineapple bought at Woolies with top already cut off and wrapped in cling wrap. 2 weeks later, it was swarming with live maggots inside the plastic. What are your thoughts on that?
So they covered the pineapple.
Yeah, so you know those half pineapples that you can buy that are already covered in wrap.
Yeah, yeah.
Maggots, so.
I mean, it could have had the eggs in it,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and they've just developed. You know, it's really hard in the agricultural industry to keep this pest out. And they're growing a lot of stuff in polytunnels now where they can control the growth of it. But if that happened to you and, you know, something like that, I would be putting that in the freezer straight away and then getting rid of it. Unfortunately, because you don't want any of that being spread. It could also be you have like the compost flies that are just around. They're just attracted to sort of ripening fruit as well. There's other flies and pests that are attracted to ripening fruit, not just the fruit fly, but the fruit fly is the most damaging one for our agricultural industry. Yeah.
Can you use tile bags around the fruit? I found this to be successful for tomatoes last year.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing with putting a covering around your fruit is you know, to stop the pests getting to it. I don't think that would really be a problem. I'm just trying to think. Sometimes with, say, apples or maybe plums, sometimes they need a bit of sunlight on the skin to get it to turn a nice color, to ripen up. Yeah, so that's why we tend to use the netting that's very fine, that still lets a bit of the sunlight in, because fruit can sometimes be affected by temperature and sunlight, and it might not be that really nice, say, red color that you really enjoy. Interesting fact is that with the blood orange, you might have heard of, that's the other way round. It needs what they call chilling nights, really cold nights, to form that really beautiful ruby red color on the orange. So they are impacted by temperature and sunlight. It would certainly stop the fruit fly. You would have to experiment. If the fruit turns out okay, it's certainly not going to hurt the fruit, but it might not be, you know, the really bright red color that you're after. So yeah.
Thank you. Will boiling fruit fly infested fruit kill them?
Yes, definitely. They're not that tough. They're not superhuman. We can get them by, you know, low temperatures and boiling and that sort of thing. Yes.
Thank you. So about the tape method, some people wrap the gall in electrical tape. The theory is that the gall wasp larvae pupate, they cannot burrow their way out and die, ending the life cycle. Does this work?
The only thing with that, okay, so if we think the thing is to be detectives when we look at some of this stuff and think about it. If you've got eggs in the center of the stem and they've pupated into larvae and they've been eating their way inside, they won't care whether there's any tape around the outside. The only time they worry about it is when they're trying to eat their way out and they can't get out. But the damage has kind of been done. Like they've been tunneling through, unfortunately, the heartwood of the stem. So yeah, it seems quite a fussy way to sort of control the gall. The damage will still be there, unfortunately. Yeah.
Thank you. If you tie netting around the trunk rather than pegging down, would this reduce fruit fly numbers traveling up from the ground?
So with the life cycle of the fruit fly, so it's in that hard casing. So it's going to munch its way out, break open that hard casing. Then it's turned into a fly. So it's got wings. So it will be looking for the maturing fruit. So yeah, you can also tie it to the trunk. The only thing sometimes with the tying things to the trunk is we've got to be careful about when you've got something pressed against the cambium layer, you can create a potential fungal infection area. You've got to let the oxygen, the air circulate. But in saying that, netting is pretty light, so it shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, I could see that being okay. Yeah, I could see that being okay.
Thank you. There's 2 questions about chickens that are related. Will chickens eat infested fruit plus for larvae? And do chickens in general keep down garden pests?
Chickens. Yep, I love chickens. Yes. So chickens, anyone who has them, I'm really jealous, first off. And they do get into the soil and they will eat any slugs, snails, pests, fruit fly, any pupae. Oh, they'll probably love it. They'll go through and they'll dig it up. And yes, they are really good for helping with that, with your fruit fly. So I don't know, there might be business for someone in that. Fruit fly chickens, you can send them out like the goats or something and they can help with the control. But yeah, anything that can go through the soil and pick those fruit fly pupae out would be fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. Can boiled or frozen fruit fly infested fruits be put in the compost?
Look, I probably wouldn't. I would put them in your FOGO bin. You know, that's your food organics, garden organics bin. I just think it's better practice to put that stuff there, because in the FOGO bin, it will then go to a facility where it will be really well composted and sort of, you know, squashed down and really kind of dealt with. Yeah, I would. Your compost bin is really for, you know, any of the food scraps you've got, your grass clippings. The point of your compost bin is to get those microbes working on little bits and pieces of organic matter from your garden. They will convert that into the humus that then you can put. It's a soil component that you can put throughout your garden. I think it's good to think about it in that way rather than the problem with putting a lot of bits of fruit as well. It can attract the rats and the mice that will be around your garden. So yeah, I reckon put it in your green bin and get it properly composted in a facility. I think that's better. Yeah.
Thank you. When should you add the netting to your fruit trees?
Okay, so like I said, you need to wait until you've got the blossoms, right? So and each of your trees is going to be different. So go out and have a look. Let that, just keep that open. Let the pollinators do their work. So they're fertilizing all your blossoms. Once you start to see your blossoms kind of shrivel up a bit or close up or slightly fall off, and have a good look, and you're starting to see a little bit of a swelling underneath the flower, then you know that that's going to start turning into fruit. That's when I would net it. And each of your trees is going to be slightly different, right? So you just need to get out there and have a look. But please let your blossoms form first, and then you can net your tree. You don't want to do it while your blossoms are still there, because unfortunately, you know, you won't get your fruit, because you need those bees first. Yeah.
I think maybe someone wanted you to expand on one of his first questions. So I'll go over the question being answered. Maybe you can just expand on it.
Yeah, sure.
So how can you net tomatoes against fruit fly and still allow blue-banded bees to pollinate them, considering the tomatoes flower and fruits at the same time? So yeah, he's just making a point that they flower at the same time. So
Yeah,
he just wants a bit of
yeah.
bit more
Look,
detail.
that's these plants that do flower and fruit at the same time. It's really difficult. But I think having one of those pheromone traps very close to the tomato would really help. All right, because you can't really net it when you've still got the blossoms. So having some sort of trap nearby would be really good. I'd also have some alliums in a pot close by. So alliums, quite strong smelling plants, and they will confuse the fruit fly a little bit as well. So yeah, unfortunately, with the tomatoes, that is a bit of a trickier one. Or you could look at, like we talked about before, having the little bags and just bagging a few of the fruit while the blossoms are going on. But it's going to be a bit of a trial and error, I think, with the fruit fly and what it's sort of going for. But they definitely are attracted to scent. So if we can, and tomatoes do have quite a strong smell to them, but if we can just divert the fruit fly towards the trap, that would help. Yeah.
Thank you. What is the easiest tray that you can make yourself?
The easiest trap you can make yourself?
A tray. Oh, yeah, it might be trap. I'm not sure if it's a typo.
Yeah, it is trap.
Okay.
Look, I think you can get some fruit juice, like tropical fruit juice, and you can get like a bit of even those soft drink bottles. If you cut the top off, you can pour the tropical drink in there, and they will kind of go in there and drown themselves. And you put holes in the top and they come through and they will kind of drop in and drown. But you can put a little bit of like bleach in the juice, and that will kill them too. So they don't need a lot. They're only tiny. They don't need a lot of bleach to kill them, but you can put that in. There's lots of recipes out there for that liquid combination, but basically you're thinking about, sweet, fruity scent, something that they have to kind of crawl into, they're attracted to, and they drop down into. And I think the soft drink bottles are really a nice size for them, and just put holes in it, hang that. So yeah, you can use something like that. That'd be good too.
Thank you. I have seen blue-banded bees in my garden. How do I encourage more of them? I heard that they have hives in the ground. Is that correct?
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear someone else has a blue-banded bees. They like to burrow into mud and soil. And I heard a story once of a woman who was up in Ballarat, and she was looking at one of these old brick schools, and the mortar, the crumbling mortar, there were like hundreds of blue-banded bees in there because they could get in there. So yes, they like the soil, they like the clay soil. So what you could even do is get some of the really tough clay and put holes in it, like just stab some holes and put it up under sort of an eaves or some burrows in there. Another thing about bees is that some of you may have the bee hotels. There was quite a trend on for a while there for everyone to have bee hotels. The interesting thing about Victoria is the hive bees that we have here are the European honeybee. If we want to attract the native hive bees, unfortunately, they're in Queensland. Of course, they're in Queensland. They're not here. So the bee hotels are not going to attract the native bees. They're going to attract things like beetles and spiders and other things like that. But that's really important too, because if we have those insects in your garden, what you're going to start to have is an ecosystem. So everything's interacting with everything else in your garden. And I do say to people, have a space in your garden for wilderness. It can be just a small spot, but let the grasses grow, have some rocks out. That's the other thing. Have a bee bath. So what you can do is get like a little dish, a tiny little dish, and put some water in, some rocks and sticks in, and then the bees can come and have a drink. Because I've been to, I remember going to this woman's garden who had chickens, and she had the water feeder for the chickens, and I thought, what's going on there? And I had a look, and it was just covered in bees. because they were so thirsty. It was the middle of summer and it was how they could get their water. So the bees are looking for water. And with the honeybees, the European honeybee, the ones that are foraging, the ones that we see in the garden are the senior bees. So, you know, when we retire, we get to laze around. In the bee world, they're the ones going out and doing all the work. So do have somewhere for the blue banded bee and the other bees to go and have a drink. That's a really nice thing to do. And you can create your own bricks or clay and just put some holes in it and put it somewhere sheltered in your garden. And that will help encourage those bees to have somewhere to, you know, raise their young as well. It's really important that we encourage them throughout our garden. Now, anyone who has praying mantis in their garden, that's gold star. If you have praying mantis in your garden, it means that there's enough insect life there to feed the praying mantis. It's like if you have all these insects in your garden, by, you know, having places for them to shelter and breed and hide, then you're going to get the insects, then you'll get the birds. Then when you get the birds, you get this beautiful sort of mini ecosystem happening in your garden. So I really say to people, you know, you share your garden. You share your garden with, you know, the creatures that are there. So sorry, that was very long-winded. I love talking about bees. They're just the best.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I have a reddish small fly, larger than a fruit fly, that's attracted to my compost bin. Any ideas on controlling it?
Yeah, so with your compost bin, it's like making a cake, right? So you have your greens, which is your veggie scraps and your grasses. Then you have your browns, which are like your sawdust, your newspaper, you know, your dry leaves, and you mix the two. You have more browns than greens, and you mix it together. And what happens is there's oxygen within there, and then you get the microbes that eat it down. If you've got a compost that's too wet or has too many veggie scraps in it, it starts to go rotten because the microbes can't get to it fast enough, and then that attracts the flies. So it sounds like your compost might be a bit too wet. And if it smells, your compost shouldn't really smell much because it should constantly be consumed. So yeah, usually you start to get more flies when it's wetter and it's smellier, and that sort of thing. So what I say to a lot of people is, rather than getting a really narrow compost bin, it's better to get a wider one. And also have a look at getting one of those corkscrew turners rather than having to fork it with a shovel, because remember, we need to keep the oxygen to get all the good stuff out of the compost bin. Get one of those turners and that will get the oxygen in there, because we need to protect our backs, because having to dig that compost all the time to get the oxygen happening is a bit, you know, is hard work. If also the other thing, if it goes cold and dry, it will go anaerobic. All right. So aerobic's the one with all the microbes are eating it and it's quite warm. It can go the other way where it goes cold and anaerobic, and that takes a lot longer to form your compost. So it will still break down eventually, but that can take longer. The other thing that I'm a big fan of is worm farms. Now, I'm hoping that some of you have worm farms out there, but if you're like, you love your veggies, you're vegetarian, that sort of thing, they're fantastic, because worms can eat so many more scraps for you, and you can get a small unit. If you've got a small place, small garden, you can put it somewhere in the shade, keep it covered, and they will get through your veggie scraps, and then you can put the worm tea and the worm castings all over your garden. Fantastic for your garden. So that's another good thing to think about. Yeah.
Thank you. I have lots of ants on my lemon and lime trees. There are lots of white dots on the leaves too. How do I get rid of it?
Lots of white dots.
Yes, on the leaves.
That sound, either without seeing it, it could be a bit of a fungal infection. if it's not sort of raised dots on your leaves. So I would be looking at using a bit of an antifungal spray just on those leaves to keep it under control, because it is a bit of a concern with those sorts of, there's a lot, with these rains, there is a lot of fungal infections around. So using a bit of antifungal will be good. Yeah.
And I think there's one more which I've lost. Oh, I've lost it. Oh, what about putting the boiled fruit into an aero bin? I hate to waste my food matter.
Yeah, you could do that too. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I would just make sure it's quite pulverized, and maybe even put something else over the top of it, just to make sure that the scent of the fruit isn't attracting any fruit flies to it. I guess that's the main thing. If we think they're looking around, they're trying to smell out the fruit. So we really want to disguise that and then protect the developing fruit that's going on. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're now living with fruit fly. So we just have to be aware of these things and, keep cleaning up and putting out the traps and knowing what they look like as well. Yeah.
Thanks. Is there a natural predator for fruit fly?
Natural predator. There is a natural predator for citrus gall wasp. For fruit fly, no, not apart from, say, birds, lizards, other sort of creatures, spiders. Spiders will definitely eat them. So just a regular, your regular sort of creatures that will, eat them and destroy them, but nothing that particularly targets the fruit fly. With the citrus gall wasp, it does have a predator. However, the predator has not come down from Queensland. Would you believe it? It hasn't come down. I think the agricultural industry is looking at it and seeing if they can get it to survive down here. Because the issue is that it's colder here in Victoria than up in Queensland. So the fruit fly has, the gall wasp has learnt to survive, encased in the gall where it's colder temperatures, it can still survive. Whereas the predator doesn't do that. It doesn't create galls. It just attacks the gall wasp. So yeah, I think they've got to breed up a really hardy one for a colder climate, I reckon. Yeah, I haven't heard anything yet. Hopefully, fingers crossed, people, that we can get something, right?
Thank you. Two more questions.
Yep.
Is there an effective fruit fly trap that I can make myself? What does a trap on the tree trunk look like?
Okay, so as I mentioned before, you can get a soft drink bottle and cut it in two and put the sweet liquid down the bottom, and then sort of I'd sticky tape it back on, put some holes in the top, and you can hang it with a hook from a branch, and then the fruit flies will come in and they'll drop into the liquid, and that will kill them. With it, I put a little bit of bleach or something in the liquid, and that will destroy them. So you can absolutely make your own, but again, it's all about that scent of the sticky fruity liquid. So you just need to have a look at some recipes, but you can make your own and hang them from the tree. They're usually either transparent or a bit of a yellow color, because a lot of insects are really attracted to yellow, and so they kind of look for that out in nature. So you can add a bit of a yellow sort of look to it, but yeah, you can definitely make your own. It's just about what you put into them and making sure you hang them out in that springtime now, basically. Yeah.
Thank you. And last one, I read that willy wagtails go for fruit fly. There used to be lots around when I was young, none now. How do we get them back?
Oh, hear that? As willy wagtails. Oh, they're beautiful birds. Yeah, look, like with a lot of bird life, they need the trees. They need places where they can shelter and breed, have their young, that sort of thing. with the smaller birds, they do like that shrub, that middle canopy. So not the really tall eucalyptus trees, but correas and sort of the denser callistemon, little John kind of little bushes. They like that dense shrubs. They will be looking for places like that. We also need to make sure that there aren't any predators around that are going to go for those little birds, you know, like making sure that, you know, the cats are inside, or there's no foxes around, which, I mean, can be hard in Melbourne. But if you create your garden with spaces where there's shrubs, native shrubs, where there's nectar producing flowers like the correas I mentioned before, woolly wagtails will like that. It's also good to have a water source for the birds as well, that they can come down and enjoy that. But again, making sure that it's at a height that they can have a drink and then hide again. They don't like so much open space. Whereas interesting, the pest bird, the Indian myna, the reason why we have such problems with that is because it loves the open space and lawns and that sort of thing. And that's why we have that problem. So bringing back some of that beautiful sort of native bushiness can help bring some of the birds back. But remember to plant the nectar producing flowers that will encourage those types of birds as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Last minute question. Is the Gall wasp problem worldwide, or to some areas only in Australia, or like Australia?
Interesting. They do have problems with Gall wasp in California. Yeah, so unfortunately, you know, like the world is becoming smaller and we're transporting food around the world. And, you know, Australia so far has been doing a quite a good job of trying to keep these pests out. But as some of you may be aware, with the bees, we now have Varroa destructor mite now in Australia. We were the last country in the world not to have it, and then it came in through the shipping channels, I think it was. And that's a really nasty mite that kills the honeybees, and yeah, not a nice thing. So yeah, unfortunately, it's the modern world that we live in, and things are being spread around. And that's why when, you know, you come back from your holidays and they say, you know, have you got anything to declare? Or why, when you cross the borders, you know, in Adelaide or something, I say, please put your fruit in the bin. This is why. So, you know, please just follow those things and just be conscious of our beautiful environments that we have here, and preserving them and not bringing anything in that's going to really disrupt it. Yeah. Yeah.